What happens when a multimillionaire's perfect life is built on a foundation of lies? For Kate Sterling, the charismatic tech tycoon, that foundation was about to crumble. His mistress, Chloe, held the detonatora folder of photographs that could destroy his empire and his marriage. She thought she had him trapped, issuing demands from the shadows. But she never counted on Kate's pregnant wife, Isabella. She isn't just a victim. While the blackmailer plotted, the wife was planning. And in a war of secrets, the first person to go public doesn't just tell the story, they control it. Get ready, because this isn't just a scandal. It's a masterclass in revenge. The Sterling penthouse on Park Avenue was less a home and more a statement. It was a silent, sprawling testament to Kate Sterling's genius for turning code into gold. Sunlight filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, gleaming on polished marble, brushed steel, and the kind of abstract art that was purchased as an investment. The air itself smelled of Munya crisp, almost sterile blend of expensive hydrangeas and the faint, clean scent of Isabella Sterling's prenatal vitamins. At 34, Kate was the poster boy for the new American dream. His company, Nexus Dynamics, had revolutionized data security, making him a billionaire before his 30th birthday. He had the sharp jawline, the custom-tailored Tom Ford suits, and the easy confidence of a man who had never been told no. His greatest acquisition, as he often half-joked at galas, was Isabella. Isabella was classical beauty personified. A former art curator with a master's degree from the Courtauld Institute in London, she was the soft, cultured Ian to his aggressive, corporate yang. Now 7 months pregnant with their first child, a boy, she had settled into the role of the perfect billionaire's wife. She managed their 3 homes, oversaw their charitable foundation, and provided a serene harbor in the chaotic sea of his life. Their friends, a curated list of New York's elite, called them the perfect couple. But gilded cages, for all their beauty, are still cages. Lately, the silence in the penthouse had felt heavier. Kate was more distracted than usual, his phone a permanent extension of his hand, its screen angled away from her. He blamed it on a hostile takeover bid he was fighting, a corporate raid led by a rival, Masayoshi Tanaka, out of Tokyo. He's a shark, Bella, Kate had said last night, rubbing his temples as he stared out at the glittering cityscape. They're trying to bleed us dry, questioning our stability, our leadership. Every move I make is under a microscope. Isabella believed him. She saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes. She'd place a cool hand on his neck, her touch a silent offering of support. She was his partner, his confidant, the mother of his heir. She was invested in the Sterling Legacia legacy that would one day belong to their son. Her pregnancy had sharpened her focus, making her fiercely protective of the perfect world she had so carefully helped build. This Tuesday evening began like any other. Kate was late. Isabella was supervising the caterers for a small dinner party they were hosting for a state senator. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Kate. Running late. Tanaka's dogs are relentless. Start without me. Love you. She sighed softly, a familiar pang of disappointment mixed with understanding. She texted back a simple, be safe. Love you, too, and turned her attention back to the floral arrangements. Kate wasn't in a boardroom fighting off Japanese investors. He was in a borrowed apartment in the meatpacking district, the kind of aggressively modern space with exposed brick and too much gray furniture that he found soulless. He was staring at his phone, his heart hammering against his ribs. The screen didn't show stock tickers or legal documents. It showed a photograph. It was him, unmistakably him. His head was thrown back in a laugh, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Lounging against him, her scarlet-painted nails tracing a line down his chest, was Chloe Vance. Her platinum blonde hair was a stark contrast to his dark suit. Her smile was predatory. The photo wasn't just incriminating, it was intimate. It was a snapshot of a moment of reckless abandon, a moment he now realized would cost him everything. Below the photo was a message, delivered via an encrypted app from an unknown number. Remember this night at the Mandarin Oriental? I have 17 more just like it. Some are much clearer. His blood ran cold. The affair had been a colossal mistake, a 5-week lapse in judgment fueled by stress, hubris, and the intoxicating thrill of being wanted for something other than his bank account. Chloe was a marketing consultant his firm had hired. She was sharp, ambitious, and she had looked at him with a hunger he hadn't seen in years. It was a pathetic cliché, and he knew it. He had ended it 6 weeks ago decisively, he thought, and cleanly. He'd given her a generous severance package disguised as a bonus, and she had signed a non-disclosure agreement. He thought it was over. He typed with trembling fingers. "Who is this?" The reply was instantaneous. "You know who it is. I'm tired of being a secret you erased. I think my work was worth more than a severance package. I think it's worth $2 million. Extortion." The word hit him like a physical blow. "You signed an NDA," Kate typed. "And you signed a marriage license," the anonymous number shot back. "Which document do you think Isabella will care about more? Or your board of directors, especially with Tanaka sniffing around for any sign of weakness? An unstable CEO having a sordid affair. That's not just a weakness. That's blood in the water." She was right. This wasn't just about his marriage. It was about his company, his legacy, the world he had built. In the sterile, borrowed apartment, the silence was deafening. He thought of Isabella, of her serene smile and the gentle swell of her belly. He thought of the son he hadn't yet met. His phone buzzed again. It was a new picture. This one was in a hotel room. He was asleep. Chloe was awake, looking directly at the camera, a triumphant, almost cruel smirk on her face. It was the look of a predator who knew she had her prey exactly where she wanted him. Below it, a new message. "You have 48 hours to wire the funds, or I start sending these to a curated list of contacts. I'll start with your wife." The next 48 hours were a descent into a private hell of Kate's own making. Sleep offered no escape, his dreams were filled with the flash of a camera and the chilling smirk on Chloe's face. By day, he was a ghost haunting his own life, moving through board meetings and investor calls with a carefully constructed facade of control. But underneath the Tom Ford suit, his skin crawled. Every buzz of his phone, every unexpected email, sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through his system. He was trapped in a digital panopticon. Chloe was relentless. She didn't just threaten, she demonstrated her power with surgical precision. She sent him a screenshot of Isabella's personal contact information, pulled from his own phone's cloud backup. She sent another of his mother's home address in Connecticut. She sent a photo of the front gate of their son's future preschool. Each one was a silent, terrifying message: "I can reach anyone. I can touch any part of your life." "You look terrible," Isabella commented on Thursday morning, her brow furrowed with genuine concern as she placed a cup of herbal tea on his bedside table. "Did you sleep at all? Is it Tanaka?" "Yes, it's Tanaka," he lied, the name a convenient shield. The guilt was a physical weight pressing down on his chest. He couldn't meet her eyes, focusing instead on the intricate pattern of her silk robe. She was so close to him, so full of trust, and he was betraying her with every breath he took. "They're trying to poach our lead engineer. It's a mess." "You'll handle it," she said, her faith in him absolute. "You always do." She leaned in and kissed his forehead, her touch both a comfort and an accusation. "Just don't forget to take care of yourself. For me. For us." He spent the day in a frantic, desperate dance. He contacted his personal lawyer, a bulldog named Marcus Thorne, who specialized in the discrete problems of the wealthy. They met in a sterile conference room, the air thick with unspoken panic. "Pay her," Marcus advised, his face grim. "It's poison money, but you pay her. We draft a new agreement, ironclad this time. We make it clear that if another word is ever spoken, you will bring the full weight of the law down on her for extortion. And if she just asks for more later? Kate asked, his voice raw. Then we deal with it then. Right now, you have to plug the leak. Your company is vulnerable. Your marriage is. Well, you know what's at stake. Kate initiated the wire transfer. $2 million. The transaction was a gaping wound in his personal accounts, a digital monument to his stupidity. He sent Chloe a message, his tone clipped and professional. The transfer has been initiated. You'll have it by end of day. This is the end of it. We are done. The 3 dots on the encrypted chat appeared and disappeared for a full minute. His heart pounded with every pulse. Finally, her reply came. Oh, Kate. Did you really think it was about the money? A new photo appeared. This one was the worst yet. It was a grainy but undeniable shot of him and Chloe kissing passionately, not in a hotel room, but in the back of his own Maybach. The Sterling family crest was faintly visible on the headrest. It was a desecration of his carefully curated world. The money is a deposit, she wrote. A gesture of your sincerity. My silence is much more expensive. Let's call this a subscription service. And the next payment is due in a month. Also, I think I deserve a board seat on the new Asian expansion project. My marketing insights are, as you know, very valuable. Kate felt the room spin. It wasn't blackmail. It was a hostile takeover of his life. She didn't just want his money, she wanted his power. She wanted to embed herself into his world, a permanent parasite he could never remove. The thought of her in his boardroom, sitting across from his colleagues, a constant reminder of his secret, was more terrifying than any financial loss. Meanwhile, Isabella's world was shrinking. The quiet unease that had been simmering for weeks had begun to crystallize into suspicion. Kate's explanation about the hostile takeover no longer sat right. He had faced corporate battles before, emerging energized and ruthless. This was different. He was haunted, furtive. He flinched when she touched his phone. He had started locking the door to his home office, something he'd never done before. The first concrete crack in her perfect world appeared on a credit card statement. She was reviewing their household expenses online, a mundane task, when a charge caught her eye, the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, a suite for one night, 2 months ago. The bill was nearly $4,000. It wasn't the amount that bothered her, it was the date. She had been in London that week, finalizing the sale of a small art collection she still managed. Kate was supposed to have been working late every night. A cold knot formed in her stomach. It was probably nothing. A business meeting that ran late, a client he needed to put up. There were a dozen logical explanations, but her intuition, sharpened by pregnancy and a deep-seated knowledge of her husband's habits, screamed that something was wrong. She did something she had never done before. She went to his laptop, which he'd left open on his desk. She felt a wave of self-loathing, the shame of a spy in her own home, but the image of that hotel bill wouldn't leave her alone. She didn't know his password. On a whim, she typed in the name of the boat they had chartered on their honeymoon in Greece, Calypso 2018. The screen unlocked. Her breath hitched. For a moment, she just sat there, her heart thudding. The access felt like a transgression she could never take back. His desktop was neat, organized into folders, Nexus bids, Sterling Foundation, personal. There was one folder that was oddly named, contingency. Her mouse hovered over it for a long second before she double-clicked. It was protected by another password. She tried a few variations, their anniversary, her birthday, the name they had chosen for their son. Nothing. Frustrated, she was about to close it when she remembered a conversation from years ago. He'd been talking about his first successful piece of code, the one that had launched his career. He'd called it his Genesis project. She typed Genesis project. The folder opened. It wasn't filled with business documents. It was a collection of legal papers, drafts of non-disclosure agreements, and a file simply titled CV. She clicked on it. A resume filled the screen. Chloe Vance, marketing consultant. A smiling, professional headshot looked back at her. Isabella scanned the document, her mind racing. The dates of employment aligned with the period of Kate's intense stress. There was a link to a portfolio. She clicked it. It took her to a personal website, a sleek, obnoxious blog filled with articles about growth hacking and synergizing brand potential and photos. Lots of photos. Chloe at a product launch. Chloe giving a presentation. Chloe on a yacht, laughing with friends. And then, one photo stopped her cold. Chloe was wearing a delicate gold necklace. It was a unique piece, a small, stylized starburst. Isabella's hand flew to her own throat. She owned the exact same necklace. It was a custom piece Kate had commissioned for her last birthday. He had told her the jeweler had made only one. In the photo, Chloe Vance was wearing her necklace. The web of lies was no longer a suspicion. It was a suffocating reality. And Isabella Sterling was caught right in the center of it. She closed the laptop, her movements slow and deliberate. The silence of the penthouse was no longer peaceful. It was menacing. She stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the city below. The perfect world she had built was an illusion. And the man she loved, the father of her child, was a stranger. The discovery of the necklace was the flick of a switch. The soft, trusting Isabella who managed dinner parties and dreamed of motherhood was gone. In her place was someone colder, more methodical. The shock had burned away the fog of denial, leaving behind the sharp, crystalline clarity of betrayal. She did not cry. Tears were a luxury she could not afford. Instead, a chilling, calculating calm descended upon her. For the next week, Isabella became a ghost in her own home, a silent observer, gathering data. She was no longer a wife, she was an intelligence operative, and her marriage was hostile territory. Her pregnancy, once a source of vulnerability, now felt like a shield. Her quiet moods, her fatigue, her need for rest all were easily attributed to her condition, providing the perfect cover for her clandestine activities. She began with digital forensics. Armed with the 2 passwords she had discovered, she delved into the digital life Kate had so carefully hidden. She didn't just look, she cross-referenced. The hotel bill from the Mandarin Oriental. She searched Kate's calendar for that date. It was marked dinner with Tanaka's lawyers. A quick, anonymous call to the hotel concierge, posing as a personal assistant confirming a past expense, revealed the room was booked under Kate's personal credit card, and the room service charges included 2 dinners and a bottle of champagne. She moved on to the contingency folder. The NDA for CV was there. She read every line of the dense legalese. It was a termination agreement. Chloe Vance had been fired, or more accurately, paid to disappear. The amount was substantial, far more than a simple severance for a short-term consultant. This wasn't a golden handshake, it was hush money. Her next target was the Maybach. Kate's car was his sanctuary, a rolling fortress of privacy. The day he was in back-to-back meetings in Midtown, Isabella told the household staff she was feeling unwell and was going to rest. Then, she took the elevator down to the private garage. The chauffeur, a kind man named Hector whom she had always treated with respect, was polishing the chrome. "Hector," she said, her voice soft. "I think I may have left my reading glasses in the car yesterday. Would you mind if I looked for them?" "Of course not, Mrs. Sterling," he said, opening the rear door for her. "Take your time." The scent of rich leather filled her senses. It was mixed with something else, a faint, floral perfume that was not her own. She ran her hand along the seat, her fingers searching. Tucked deep into the crevice between the seat and the backrest, her fingers brushed against something small and hard. She pulled it out. It was an earring. A single, gaudy-looking diamond stud, clearly not from a reputable jeweler. It was the kind of thing that tried to look expensive but failed. It wasn't hers. She closed her hand around it, the cheap metal a cold, alien presence against her skin. This was the piece of physical evidence she needed, the tangible link that brought the digital betrayal into the real world. "Find them?" Hector asked as she stepped out. "No, I must have left them upstairs after all," she lied smoothly, slipping the earring into her pocket. "Thank you, Hector." That evening, she found her final piece of the puzzle. Kate was in the shower, and his phone, which he now guarded like the crown jewels, lay on the nightstand. For the first time in days, it was unlocked. A message had just come in. She had only a few seconds. Her heart hammered as she picked it up. It was from the same encrypted app he'd been using, a name she didn't recognize flashing on the screen, Project Venus. The message was simple: "Time is ticking, Kay, the board wants to see a proposal for the Asia expansion by Monday." My proposal. Isabella's mind connected the dots with terrifying speed. CV Chloe Vance. Venus. This was the blackmailer. And she wasn't just demanding money. She was demanding a seat at the table, a permanent place in their lives. She put the phone down just as the water in the shower shut off. Her hands were perfectly steady. She had it all now. The timeline, the name, the financial transactions, the physical evidence, the motive. She wasn't just a scorned wife who had found proof of an affair. She was a prosecutor who had just built an airtight case. The rest of the evening passed in a surreal haze. She sat opposite Kate at dinner, listening to him talk about his day, the lies spilling from his lips as easily as the expensive Bordeaux he poured into his glass. She smiled. She nodded. She asked the right questions. She played the part of the devoted, unsuspecting wife flawlessly. But inside, she was watching a stranger. The man she had loved was an illusion, a carefully crafted fiction. The man sitting before her was a liar and a coward, a man who had not only betrayed her bed but had allowed a predator to threaten their entire world. When they went to bed, he reached for her, his hand resting on the swell of her belly where their son slept. "I love you, Bella," he whispered into the darkness. "Everything I do, it's to protect this. To protect us." For the first time, she didn't just feel the lie, she understood its pathetic, desperate source. He wasn't protecting them. He was protecting himself. His touch, once a comfort, now felt like a violation. She had to force herself not to recoil. She lay perfectly still, feigning sleep, until his breathing deepened into a steady rhythm. Then, and only then, did she allow the facade to crack. A single, silent tear traced a path down her temple and into her hair. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of rage. The unraveling was complete. The storm was coming, and she, Isabella Sterling, was no longer going to be a victim of it. She was going to be the tempest itself. Saturday morning dawned gray and oppressive, the sky over Manhattan the color of bruised slate. The weather was a perfect mirror for the atmosphere inside the Sterling penthouse. Isabella had waited, her patience a coiled spring. She let Kate have his coffee. She watched him read the Wall Street Journal, feigning interest in market trends while his mind was clearly elsewhere. She waited until their weekend housekeeper had arrived and discreetly shut herself in the laundry room. Then she walked into the living room where Kate was staring at his phone, a deep line of worry carved between his brows. She didn't speak. She simply placed the cheap diamond stud earring on the glass coffee table between them. The sound was small, a tiny click, but it echoed in the cavernous room like a gunshot. Kate's head snapped up. His eyes darted from the earring to her face. He saw no tears, no hysteria. He saw an expression of glacial calm that terrified him more than any screaming match could have. "I believe this belongs to your contingency plan," Isabella said, her voice even and devoid of emotion. The blood drained from Kate's face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked like a fish, gasping for air. Her name is Chloe Vance, Isabella continued, her voice cutting through his pathetic silence. A marketing consultant you hired for 5 weeks. You had an affair with her at the Mandarin Oriental while I was in London. You terminated her employment with a 6-figure NDA, which she is now using, along with a collection of rather intimate photographs, to blackmail you. She doesn't just want money. She wants a board seat on the Asian expansion. She calls herself Venus in your encrypted chats. She paused, letting the weight of her knowledge settle over him. Did I miss anything? Kate stared at her, his billion-dollar empire and carefully constructed life crumbling to dust around him. The man who could command boardrooms and bend markets to his will was utterly and completely undone. Bella. How, he stammered, the words failing him. You left a digital trail a child could follow, Kate, she said, her voice laced with contempt. Your passwords are a sentimental joke, and you are sloppy. You brought her into our car. You let her wear my necklace. Her voice cracked for the first time, a flicker of pure fury breaking through her composure. My necklace. You didn't just cheat. You erased me. I was going to tell you, he pleaded, his voice cracking, the last refuge of a guilty man. I was trying to handle it, to protect you from it. Protect me? She laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You were trying to protect your share price. You were trying to protect your public image. Do not insult my intelligence by pretending this was about me. You chose her. And when she became a liability, you chose your money. I was never a factor in your calculations. He finally broke. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The sight didn't move her. His tears were for himself, for his predicament. They were not for her, or for the vows he had shattered. She has pictures, Bella, he choked out, his voice muffled by his hands. Pictures that would. They would ruin us. The board, with the Tanaka bid. They would call for my head. We would lose everything. We are not losing anything, Isabella corrected him, her voice like steel. You are. You made this mess. You brought this predator into our lives. As if on cue, Kate's phone, still on the table, buzzed viciously. The screen lit up with a notification from the encrypted app, from Venus. Isabella picked it up before he could react. She held it so he could see. Venus, I just saw the agenda for Monday's board meeting. My name isn't on the proposal list. I am giving you until 9 a.m. Monday. Either I get a call from your lawyer with a contract for the board seat and confirmation of a second $2 million transfer, or I'm sending a little preview of my portfolio to Katrina Bell at the New York Times. And just for fun, I'll send a copy to your wife's personal email. Let's see who you're more afraid of. The clock is ticking. The final, desperate gambit. The public threat, the deadline. Chloe, feeling her power slip, was going for the kill shot. Kate looked at the message, then at Isabella's face. He saw the last vestiges of his life slipping through his fingers. Bella, please, he whispered, a broken man. We have to pay her. We have to do what she says. Isabella looked from the phone to her husband's pathetic, tear-streaked face. For a long moment, she said nothing. The air in the room was thick with despair and the stench of his lies. She thought of the life she had dreamed of the son she was carrying, the legacy she had worked to build. She saw it all threatened by a cheap affair and a greedier woman. In that moment, the conflict shifted. It was no longer Kate versus Chloe with her as the collateral damage. She was the one who had unearthed the truth. She was the one who understood the full scope of the threat. And she was the one who held the final, devastating piece of leverage, the truth. A strange, fierce light ignited in her eyes. Kate wanted to pay the blackmailer. He wanted to hide. He wanted to cower. Isabella Sterling had a different idea. No, she said, her voice suddenly, shockingly clear and strong. We are not going to pay her. We are not going to give her a seat on our board. She set the phone down on the table. She looked at her husband, not as a wife, but as a CEO evaluating a failing asset. She thinks she can control the story, Isabella said, a slow, dangerous smile playing on her lips. She's about to find out what happens when she's not the one holding the bomb. The rest of Saturday passed in a state of suspended animation. Kate, stripped of his power and authority, was adrift. He paced the penthouse like a caged animal, making frantic calls to his lawyer, Marcus Thorne, who could only offer panicked, circular advice. Pay her. Don't pay her. Sue her. Don't provoke her. Kate was paralyzed by fear, caught between the threat of public ruin and the private fury of his wife. Isabella, however, was a study in focused intensity. The confrontation had not broken her, it had forged her. The shock had given way to a cold, burning resolve. She was no longer fighting for her marriage, she now saw that as a casualty of a war that started long ago. She was fighting for her son's future, for her own dignity, and for the empire that she, in her own way, had helped to build. She would not allow some grasping opportunist and a weak-willed husband to burn it to the ground. She retreated to her home office, a serene space of cream-colored walls and books on Renaissance art, and transformed it into a war room. She understood a fundamental truth that Kate, in his panic, had forgotten. In a scandal, the narrative is everything. Chloe's power lay in the threat of exposure. She held the cards because the game was being played in secret. Isabella decided to flip the table over. She wouldn't just survive the scandal, she would author it. Her plan was audacious, risky, and utterly ruthless. It was a scorched earth policy designed to seize control, neutralize the threat, and reframe the entire situation. Her first call was not to a lawyer or a publicist. It was to her father, a retired federal judge living in Palm Beach. He was a man of immense integrity and strategic brilliance, the one person she could trust without reservation. She laid out the entire situation for him, her voice clinical and precise, omitting no sordid detail. He listened without interruption, his silence a comforting presence over the phone line. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "The extortion is your weapon, Isabella," he finally said, his voice a low rumble. "The affair is the wound, but the blackmail is the crime. You cannot let her frame this as a love triangle. You must frame it as a targeted attack on your family and your business, with your husband as the flawed victim and you as the protector." "That's what I intend to do," she replied. "You'll need to get ahead of her," her father continued. "You can't let this Katrina Bell at the Times break the story. You need your own messenger, someone credible, someone who will tell it from your angle." Isabella already had a name in mind. Not Katrina Bell, a journalist known for her sharp, often cynical take on the city's elite. She thought of someone different, Evelyn Reed, a celebrated columnist for Vanity Fair. Reed specialized in long-form profiles of powerful women, stories of resilience and complexity. Contacting Evelyn Reed wasn't leaking a story, it was commissioning a portrait. Using a secure email account, she drafted a message to Reed. Subject: an unprecedented story of corporate extortion and betrayal. Ms. Reed. My name is Isabella Sterling. My husband, Kate Sterling of Nexus Dynamics, and our family are currently the targets of a multi-million-dollar extortion scheme by a former consultant. This individual is leveraging a past indiscretion in an attempt to seize a position on my husband's corporate board and extract millions, timed to coincide with a hostile takeover bid from a foreign rival. She has threatened to release a manipulated, salacious version of this story to the press by Monday morning to inflict maximum damage. I have chosen not to be a victim of this predatory attack. I have chosen to tell the truth myself. I have evidence of the affair, the extortion demands, bank transfers, and more. I am prepared to give you an exclusive, on-the-record interview, complete with documentation. I want the world to see what this kind of corporate predation looks like, and what a woman will do to protect her family and her legacy. I am available to meet at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Isabella Sterling. She hit send before a single tremor of doubt could stop her. Next, she compiled her evidence. She logged back into Kate's laptop and systematically downloaded everything: the NDA, Chloe's resume, the encrypted chat logs with their escalating demands. She took a high-resolution photo of the cheap earring against the backdrop of the Maybach's interior. She printed the hotel bill and the credit card statements. She arranged it all in a neat digital folder, a devastating dossier of Kate's downfall. She then wrote her own public statement. She crafted it with the precision of an art curator, choosing every word for maximum impact. She was not the weeping, scorned wife, she was the calm, resolute matriarch. She acknowledged Kate's profound personal failure and his terrible lapse in judgment, but quickly pivoted, framing it as a vulnerability that was ruthlessly exploited. She painted Chloe Vance not as a mistress, but as a corporate predator who had weaponized intimacy. Her final paragraph was the masterstroke: "My husband's actions have caused immeasurable pain to me and our family, and that is a private matter we will deal with in time. But this is no longer about a personal betrayal. It is an attack on our company, our employees, and the future I am building for my unborn child. I will not stand by while a criminal extortionist attempts to tear down what we have built. I am taking this step today to reclaim the narrative, to expose a predator, and to protect my family. We will not be blackmailed. We will not be broken." By Sunday afternoon, she had her reply from Evelyn Reed. The journalist was intrigued, sensing the story of a lifetime. A meeting was set for 7 p.m. that evening at Reed's private office. As Isabella prepared to leave, dressed in an elegant but severe navy blue dress, Kate finally approached her, his face a mask of desperation. "Bella, what are you doing?" he pleaded. "Don't do this. We can still fix this quietly. We can pay her." Isabella looked at him, a great, weary sadness washing over her. He still didn't understand. "There is no quietly, Kate," she said, her voice soft but firm. "There is only her version or my version. You lost the right to choose when you invited a wolf into our home. I am doing what a CEO does when a part of the company becomes toxic. I'm cutting it out. I'm just starting with you." She picked up the leather portfolio containing her printed evidence, a slim, elegant weapon. "You can hide here and wait for the fallout," she told him, walking towards the door. "Or you can start figuring out how you're going to answer to your board of directors. Either way, the story breaks tomorrow. And it will be my story." She left him standing alone in the center of their gilded cage, a king who had just discovered he was nothing but a pawn in his queen's game. At precisely 7 a.m. on Monday morning, the internet broke. The Vanity Fair website published Evelyn Reed's article under a stunningly bold headline: "The Sterling Gambit, Inside a Pregnant Wife's Decision to Expose Her Husband's Affair and a Multi-million-dollar Extortion Plot." It was a nuclear explosion in the heart of New York's high society. The story was a masterpiece of controlled demolition. It had everything: the billionaire, the mistress, the betrayal. But thanks to Isabella's masterful framing, it had a shocking twist. The villain wasn't just the cheating husband, it was the scheming, predatory blackmailer. And the hero was the wronged wife who refused to be a victim. The article was surgical. It included excerpts from the encrypted chats, showing Chloe's escalating demands from cash to a board seat. It detailed the timeline, aligning the affair with Kate's corporate battle against Tanaka, painting him as a man under immense pressure who made a catastrophic personal error. It featured high-resolution photos of the evidence, the hotel bill, the earring. Most powerfully, it was anchored by extensive, poignant quotes from Isabella herself. She spoke not of heartbreak, but of a violation of her family and her business. She was poised, intelligent, and fiercely protective. The centerpiece was Isabella's official statement, published in full. It was a declaration of war. The fallout was instantaneous and seismic. For Chloe Vance, it was a rude awakening. She was likely sitting in her chic Soho apartment, smugly watching the clock tick down to her 9 a.m. deadline, imagining Kate Sterling sweating in his penthouse. Instead, her phone began to melt down with notifications. Her name, once just a blip on marketing websites, was now the #1 trending topic on Twitter. Her leverage, the photos, the secrecy had been rendered utterly worthless overnight. In fact, it was worse than worthless. Isabella had preemptively described the existence of salacious and intimate photographs in the article, framing them not as proof of an affair, but as tools of a criminal extortionist. If Chloe were to release them now, she wouldn't be revealing a secret, she would be confirming herself as the predator Isabella had described. She had been outmaneuvered in the most public way imaginable. The narrative was set, and she was cast as the villain. The story was no longer millionaire cheats on pregnant wife. It was criminal marketer attempts to extort billionaire's empire, wife fights back. Her phone rang incessantly with calls from reporters. Her social media was a toxic wasteland of insults. She was no longer a player in the game, she was the carcass the vultures were circling. For Kate Sterling, the morning was surreal. He sat in his silent penthouse, the city still gray outside, and watched the life he knew detonate on his laptop screen. It was a strange, disembodying experience. He was being publicly flayed, his deepest shame laid bare for the world to see. And yet, it was his own wife holding the knife. There was horror, of course. His phone was vibrating off the hook with calls from his board members, his PR team, Marcus Thorne. But beneath the horror, there was a sliver of something else. He had underestimated Isabella on a galactic scale. He had seen her as a beautiful, gentle creature to be protected. He now saw her as a brilliant, ruthless strategist who had just saved his company, even as she destroyed their marriage. She hadn't just plugged the leak, she had redirected the flood to drown his blackmailer, sacrificing him in the process. He was collateral damage in her war. For Nexus Dynamics and Wall Street, the story was a bombshell. The company's stock plunged in pre-market trading, just as Kate had feared. The words, unstable leadership, and CEO scandal, were everywhere. But Isabella's Gambit had a paradoxical effect. By framing the scandal as an external extortion plot, she had subtly shifted the focus. The story wasn't just about sex, it was about corporate espionage. Her mention of the hostile takeover bid from a foreign rival was a stroke of genius. It planted a seed of doubt, was Chloe Vance acting alone? Or was she a pawn for their rival, Tanaka? The board of directors, initially apoplectic, was forced to confront this new angle. Yes, their CEO was a disgrace, but was he a compromised asset being targeted by a competitor? Isabella's move had turned a simple morals charge into a complex issue of corporate security. For the public, it was the ultimate drama. Social media was a firestorm. Hashtags like Sterling Scandal, Team Isabella, and the Wife's Gambit were trending globally. Opinion was divided, but the tide of public sympathy flowed overwhelmingly toward Isabella. She was the pregnant, wronged wife, yes, but she was also a badass. She was praised for her strength, her intelligence, her refusal to be a silent victim. She became an overnight icon, a symbol of female empowerment in the face of betrayal. At 10 a.m., as the chaos reached its peak, Isabella made her final move. She released a second, shorter statement exclusively through her newly created Twitter account. To everyone who has reached out with messages of support, thank you. This has been an excruciatingly difficult time, but my priority remains the well-being of my child and the stability of our company. I have full faith that the board of Nexus Dynamics will take the appropriate steps to secure its leadership. I will be taking a leave of absence from my public duties to focus on my health and my family. I ask for privacy during this time. She then turned off her phone, disconnecting from the inferno she had unleashed. She had laid all her cards on the table. She had controlled the narrative, neutralized her enemy, and repositioned herself as the power behind the throne. The implosion was complete. Now, all that was left was to survey the wreckage. A beautiful ending. 6 months later, the New York winter had settled in, blanketing the city in a clean, hopeful white. The firestorm of the Sterling scandal had cooled, and from the ashes, something new and unexpected was beginning to grow. Chloe Vance had vanished, a ghost haunted by her own greed. Faced with a federal investigation for extortion, she had fled the country with the initial $2 million, the only thing she had to show for her failed conquest. She was a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and Soho bars, a footnote in a story that now belonged entirely to Isabella. Kate Sterling's public fall was brutal, but his private one was transformative. He was stripped of his chairmanship and forced into a period of intense therapy, but he kept his role as CEO. The crisis hadn't just broken him, it had broken him open. The swaggering titan was gone, replaced by a humbled man who saw with painful clarity what he had almost destroyed. His real work was not at Nexus Dynamics, but at home. The penthouse was no longer a silent, cold space. It was a place of tentative effort, of quiet apologies that weren't just words, but actions. He learned to listen. He learned to be present. Isabella emerged from the flames reborn. She gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Arthur, who became the absolute center of her universe. For a while, she believed the love for her husband was gone, turned to ash. But as she watched Kate's genuine, painful, and consistent efforts to atone, not to win her back, but to become a man worthy of their son, a tiny, fragile seed of something new began to sprout. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It was something more complex. It was the recognition of a shared future, built not on a naive dream of perfection, but on the hard-won reality of survival and the slow, arduous work of rebuilding. She had saved their empire with cold calculation, but she was rediscovering her heart through the warmth of her son's hand in hers. One evening, she stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, holding Arthur, looking down at the glittering city. Kate approached, not with the desperation of a guilty man, but with the quiet strength of one who was trying. He didn't speak of business or of the past. He just looked at his son, then at his wife. "He has your eyes," Kate said softly. "The same strength." Isabella looked from her son's face to her husband's. For the first time in a long time, she didn't see a stranger or a coward. She saw a man fighting his way back. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "He's a Sterling," she replied, a hint of a smile touching her lips. "We're stronger than we think." It wasn't the fairy tale she had once dreamed of, full of effortless romance. It was something harder, colder, but in its own way, more real and far more precious. It wasn't a perfect ending. It was a beginning. So, what do you think? Was Isabella's gambit a brilliant act of self-preservation, and was Kate's redemption earned? What would you have done in her shoes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This story was a wild ride, and we want to hear your take on it. If you were captivated by this tale of betrayal and revenge, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who loves a good drama, and make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss the incredible stories we have coming up next.